quite often our personal mind keeps us stuck. And quite often it's about worry, and it's about lack of, and it's about financial issues, and it's about our health, and it's about our children, it's about our house, it's about our social standings, or it's about our relationships with other people, places, and things. And this personal mind that I say lives in this 3D reality, this denseness, keeps us stuck. And because we sit there and we loop over and over and over again about things we cannot control, and we worry about things we cannot control. So how do we get out of that personal mind and we rise up to a more calm, peace, and flowing mind? And so I personally have come up with different ways as I wrestled with this very thing of how to get out of the personal mind that just seems to actually be like junk food. It gives you a short fix, and you think you're doing something and you think you're worrying about something, but it's junk food. It's literally poisoning you, and it's keeping you stuck. So for me, this is how I rise above my personal mind, and I kind of wrote down some ideas. So when I start to acknowledge that my mind is looping, or I'm thinking about something over and over again, and it might not be a positive thought, and it might not be something that moves me forward, I say, oh, there I go again. And and I acknowledge it. I'm worrying about something. This must be here to teach me something. I have another lesson to learn. So I acknowledge my personal mind, and I acknowledge my worries, or if I hurt someone, or I'm feeling uncomfortable in a situation. So I just acknowledge it. And once you acknowledge something, you can come into acceptance. And then only will you have the courage to move forward. So acknowledging your personal mind first is a really important thing, instead of resisting it and trying to shut it down, because it's going to talk. And it will talk to the day you die about things that are really not important, I think. It keeps you stuck. So once we acknowledge the personal mind and we come to the courage to move forward, I personally ask for a eagle's perspective. I ask God, give me an eagle's perspective on this situation. Let me see the darkness and the light that is moving in this situation in order to progress me forward, in order to help me on my journey in life. So I ask for divine guidance, and I ask quite often, God, I'd love a day, a 5D day, a day with heavenly perspective, where I see from the eyes of love and I'm not in fear. So I definitely always ask for the highest good and the highest good of those around me. And I always, for me, say for love and healing of the world. And so I ask for an eagle's perspective. I quiet my mind every day. And I think that's a very important practice, all of us, to quiet our minds. This morning, some things happened. We were busy. We had house guests. I was getting people going and moving, and then some personal stuff happened. And it wasn't until about 12 noon, I didn't have to work today, that I realized I have not meditated, and my mind was looping, and I felt stirred up. So I was definitely in my personal mind. So I came into my office, I shut the door, and I just listened to the fountain, and I just breathed in and out. And I did that for about 20, 30 minutes. And all of a sudden I found this greater perspective. Here I am again. I don't need to worry about all that stuff. All I need to do is rise up and see the way that I'm supposed to go, not get so involved in all the emotions. So again, quieting your mind with a practice every day, I think is really important. And when you start to feel that monkey mind rise up, come back to the here and now throughout the day, right? We don't need to have only our morning routine. Do it throughout the day. Quiet your mind, slip away. It takes 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it doesn't matter. Breathe, come back to your breath. That's really going to help you rise above the personal mind. Then allow for new thoughts to come in. So when we are in our personal mind, we stay stuck. And so when we stay stuck, we will write the old story over and over again. And when we write the old story, we will never progress forward. So when you notice that you're looping back to how things were, or you're replaying something in your mind that happened years ago or as a child, acknowledge that. Wow, I must still need healing from that, okay? Release it, let it go, see the eagle's perspective, quiet your mind in order to ask for a new perspective, in order to get out of that looping, back away from those thoughts that keep you stuck by quieting your mind several times throughout the day. I tell a lot of my clients, put on the robe of light, put on an armor of God, whatever works for you. and I try to stay very neutral with anybody's. I try not to talk about anybody's religion. I'm talking about divine support here. I'm talking about beautiful God spirituality, source help. See that light encompassing you. See like a cocoon of light around you. Know that when you ask, you shall receive, and you're going into something with guidance and with protection. I don't go a day without asking God for this armor of light around me, because I know I'm asking for protection, so I'll get it. So again, with quieting our mind, we're going to put on some sort of protection. Zip up a big zipper, see you in a cozy, like a bodysuit, whatever works for you, armor of God. See the robe of light on you. I've talked about this a lot in my videos, but I think it's very important. So now you're asking for divine support in order to get out of your personal mind. And then see that I have little notes here, so sorry. See that there is a unified intelligence. God is up there with all this amazing information, and there's this quantum field of information. And if we stay stuck in our personal mind, that we won't get to really experience that unified field. And I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about Einstein. And I really am intrigued by Einstein because he was so intelligent, right? And how did he get all this information? So in this one podcast, they were talking about how he would hold little metal balls in his hand. And he would be, when he was trying to think of a new invention or think of a new theory or think of just quantum theory, he would stay really quiet and he would rest into this, what you would call this gamma state. And it's that state between wakefulness and sleep. And so he'd get himself really relaxed, and maybe through the breath or through some nice music or whatever it is that works for you. So you get yourself into a really relaxed feeling. What he'd do with these little metal balls, little metal BBs in his hand, if he started to fall asleep and his hand relaxed, the beads would fall down and it would wake him up. He'd pick them up and he'd try to stay in that between wake and sleep. And so what does that state, that gamma state, get you? It gets you open to the quantum field, and it gets you open to learning from a higher perspective. In my quiet times, I always say I am open to receiving divine guidance in my knowledge, and also in healing, and also in my wisdom, right? So I'm always asking for that divine knowledge. I had a kind of an aha moment about 4 or 5 months ago when I went through my grief and trauma counseling training. And I sat there for 4 days straight, for 10 hours a day, listening to the doctor talking about all these studies on how to heal from grief and trauma. And every single study, I was like, gosh, I know that. I already do that intuitively in my practice. I know that. And I wasn't saying like I was a know-it-all. I was like, how would I know all this? And I haven't read any of these studies that she was pulling up. And it was because it came to my conclusion by the end of the 4 days that I am getting what I need from God because I'm asking for that divine support from the universe, from source of life. And so when we open ourselves up and we ask and we open our mind up to receiving, will we get what we need for the very next step in our lives, for the wisdom we need with each client? If you're like me, I just ask for divine guidance for each client. So that's another way I get out of my monkey mind, is realizing there's a unified field, all this information up there that is waiting to come down and give us this great wisdom. But if we're stuck in this 3D worry, stress, oh my gosh, where am I going to go next? How am I going to pay my bills? Does this person like me? Does this not? Do I make enough money? You just never will. You will never open yourself up to all this divine wisdom that is there for us. I was in California a couple weeks ago on our family vacation, and I was listening to a podcast on The Magical Child by Joseph Chilton Pierce. And he was talking about, in this podcast, savants. And he was talking about how they can't really do a lot of the normal logical things in life, right? I mean, they're just not in this 3D reality as much as all of us, but they're crazy smart. They can play the piano, they can and they've never taken a class. They can know all these mathematics. They can recite things. They can pull memories from the past like nobody's business. How can they do that? Well, he was saying in this book, The Magical Child podcast that I was listening to, that it's because they almost can't, they shut their mind off to this, not purposely, but their mind is just shut off into this 3D reality, and it is getting fed from the quantum field, is what he said. And I thought, that makes sense, right? So how do we, just the average person that I am, that many of us are, and that's not a cut down at all, like we think more, how am I going to feed my family, and this worry and that worry and all that stuff. So how do we rise up? Well, there are all these steps. And if you are wanting spiritual growth and you are wanting to move forward in life, I cannot get enough of this stuff, because I want so much to learn, and I want so much to be open to all that God has for me. So I'm going to go over them really quickly again, and I'm sure you can look on and study other people's opinions and find amazing things. I'm just going to tell you what I do personally to get above my personal mind. Is I acknowledge that I'm thinking those thoughts, and I don't resist. There you are, those looping thoughts. There you are, that worried person. There you are, that fearful person and that stressed person. Hi, kind of say hi to myself. And then I ask for a higher perspective. Let me see from an eagle's perch. Let me see from a divine perspective. Let me see through the eyes of love. So I ask, and I see myself come up and rise up above. I quiet my mind. I have a practice of quiet my mind daily. I think it's super important. So then I quiet my mind throughout the day as things start to rise up, and as things start to clog my energy and my mind. I really am on top of that, and I am not perfect for sure. I get clogged very easily, but I've learned the tools to stop before it gets too chronic. So I quiet my mind and I allow for new thoughts to come, right? I changed the perspective of how I see something in order to change what I see. And I also walk through fear. Fear keeps us stuck. I walk to the other side of fear, because that's where a lot of our growth and our answers are, on the other side of fear. I see that there is a unified field, and I see that God has this divine wisdom for us all. And that, the quote that all you need is within, I never knew what that meant. I thought it was some new agey kind of, all you need is within. What does that mean? Truly, all we need is within. When you sit still and quiet enough, God feeds you the answers, whether you realize it or not. And when you sit quiet enough and you ask for divine healing, and you ask for that light of protection, I forgot to mention that, ask for the light of protection, and ask for healing, and ask for divine wisdom. You're getting it whether you realize it or not. So ask and start to dive into this unified field. And then remember too, there's that real powerful place between the wake and sleep time. And that powerful place brings a lot of wisdom. And that's actually when I'm in Reiki, I personally am in a meditative gamma state, and so are my clients. And so we are allowing for this amazing energy, God's energy, to come in and do the healing. And it is not a resistance energy, right? If our head was going, what is this stuff, and how could I be healed, and all that stuff, well, we'll resist it, and we'll push that energy out instead of allowing it in to do its job. And love wants to help us. God wants to help us in every single aspect of our lives. So I challenge you to rise above the personal mind. Thank you so much for listening. If you got anything from this, take some steps. Take some steps to rise up, and take some steps to go into the wonder and mystery life, and watch how your life spiritually and physically starts to transform. Thank you, and have a great day.